Just like a footnote to what Jeremy said, I recently found out about a founding document of the United States is known as the Treaty of Paris. After the Revolution, it was the agreement we had with Britain, Great Britain, about how we were going to divvy things up. And most people would say it was really very advantageous to the colonies, what they gave. But at the last minute, a new representative came from the South to be part of these negotiations and insisted on putting in a provision that all of the slaves who left their plantations to fight for the British because they were told they would get their freedom, they had to be returned from England back to the United States. So way before we talked about the Fugitive Slave Act, it was in our, if you will, original DNA of people who had been promised freedom. We were going to pull that back from them. Well, as Janet said, we were recently on a trip, and we had the great fortune of being in Chile, in South America. And some of you might know of the tyrannical dictatorship that ruled Chile from 1973 to 1990. That was eventually defeated, and as a way to make sure something like that did not happen again, they have created a pretty phenomenal museum called the Museum of Memory and Human Rights. Now, most of it is to talk about, I'll give you their rationale. It's a space designed to give visibility to the human rights violations committed by the state of Chile between 1973 and 1990, to dignify the victims and their families, and to stimulate reflection and debate on the importance of respect and tolerance, and so that these events are never repeated, and obviously also promoting education and culture. You know, one of the things that I have found beneficial to Justice Southbury is it's made me, week after week, to think a little harder about what do we mean by justice. It's a word I probably used from a very early age without understanding its full significance. I remember being in New York City a couple of years ago. We were at St. Patrick's Cathedral, and there was a saying embedded in the floor that there is no love without justice. And that began my thinking about how, and there are no cars like that without justice. No. Made me to realize how fundamental justice is to everything we do. But as we left the museum, or finished going through the exhibit, there was a large saying across the hall that said in Spanish, "Es posible construir una democracia sin verdad y justicia," meaning, can you have democracy without truth and justice? It was raised as a question. I think it is probably the most important question we need to ask ourselves, because what we are seeing every day is justice being undermined in our country and truth being eliminated from our public sphere. In the last week, we have heard so many untrue statements made. In the last year and a half, well, I'll say year, the plethora of lies and the easiness of which people are willing to lie, meaning our leaders, about what is going on, what we can see with our own eyes, and we're told not to believe that. Well, that's what happened in Chile. They were told their children weren't disappearing, their husbands weren't disappearing, but the people knew they disappeared. They were gone. Millions of people left the country. So things can get worse, but we need to recognize how we are on that road by realizing what's happened in other countries like Chile, and to almost a greater degree, another place we went was Argentina. So I guess the other piece of that is the museum also makes very clear the U.S. complicity in what happened in Chile, where a representative government elected by a free and fair election was basically overturned. Now, we didn't pull a gun to make that happen, but we were sure behind all the people who made it happen, and we were sure behind all the suffering that took place in that country between people who were exiled and people who were literally killed, or more disgracefully, just disappeared, and there are no records about those people. So we've got to make sure we do everything we can, I believe, to stand up to the lies, stand up for truth, and make sure we don't let our leaders eliminate our history by taking documents that Jeremy's been referring to and making them disappear. So with that, turn it back to Janet.